My name is Hannah, and I'm 31 years old. At Christmas dinner, I was thanking my aunt for the thoughtful keychain she sent me for my birthday a couple of months earlier. Suddenly, she stopped stirring the gravy. She lowered her spoon, looked straight at the table, and after a long pause said in a calm, steady voice, "I bought you a $400,000 apartment." The keychain was just an extra. The room instantly went silent. Every smile vanished. One by one, the color drained from my family members' faces. Let me rewind and explain how we reached this moment. Imagine a picture-perfect Christmas dinner. The table is carefully arranged with my stepmother's finest dishes. Candles glow softly, and the rich smell of her signature honey-glazed ham fills the entire dining room. Laughter echoes as plates are passed around, and everyone is pretending to be the ideal family. My father is slicing the turkey with the same strict focus he's always had. My 19-year-old half-sister, Chloe, is glued to her phone, even though phones are supposedly not allowed at the table. My stepmother, Karen, is managing everyone like a commander, telling people where to sit and what to do. And then there's me. I'm sitting in the exact same chair I've been stuck in for the past 15 years, ever since my dad remarried. I'm seated next to Aunt Rose, who flew in unexpectedly from Arizona. Seeing her genuinely makes me smile. She's the only person in this family who has ever made me feel like I truly belong. "Aunt Rose," I say softly, leaning forward to squeeze her hand. "Thank you so much for the keychain you sent me for my birthday. It's really beautiful. I take it with me everywhere." I open my purse and place it on the table. A simple silver chain with a small heart charm. Nothing expensive, nothing flashy. But because it came from her, it meant more to me than anything else I owned. The room instantly falls silent. Not the peaceful kind of quiet that comes with good food and warm company, but the heavy kind that makes your chest tighten and your stomach sink. Aunt Rose's fork freezes halfway to her mouth. Her eyes slowly scan the table, sharp and alert. My father stops carving the turkey mid-slice. Karen's smile stiffens, like it's been painted on her face and suddenly dried. "Keychain," Aunt Rose asks, her voice calm in a way that feels dangerous. She carefully places her fork down, every movement controlled. "Hannah, sweetheart," she says evenly, "what keychain?" That's the moment I realize something is deeply, terribly wrong. The way Chloe suddenly straightens in her chair. The way Karen's hand shakes as she reaches for her wine glass. The way my dad clears his throat, like he's preparing to say something no one wants to hear. But I'm jumping ahead again. To understand why this moment feels like a bomb detonating in the middle of dinner, you need to understand what my family is really like. And trust me, it's nothing like the perfect picture they pretend to be. Growing up as the stepdaughter in this house felt like being a permanent guest who had stayed far too long. My mother passed away when I was 7. 2 years later, my dad married Karen. Karen came with her own special kind of cruelty, always wrapped in concern and presented as what's best for me. When Chloe went school shopping, she came home with designer outfits. I received carefully chosen items from the clearance rack. "We're teaching Hannah the value of money," Karen would tell relatives with a polite smile. As if being careful with money was a life lesson meant only for me. When Chloe turned 16 and asked for a car, she was given a brand new Honda Civic, complete with a bow on the hood. When I turned 16, Karen suggested I could borrow her old minivan whenever it wasn't being used for family errands. Which, as it turned out, was almost never. The pattern never changed. Chloe's needs always came first. Chloe's wants were treated like necessities. And anything I asked for was suddenly an expense we couldn't justify. When I wanted to take art classes, my dad said we needed to focus on practical skills. But when Chloe wanted piano lessons, they hired a private instructor who came to the house twice a week. College was the point where the unfairness became impossible to ignore. During my final year of high school, I worked evenings at a local movie theater to save money. I spent countless nights writing scholarship essays and chose a public state university for one reason only: I could afford the in-state tuition. Chloe, meanwhile, applied to 5 private colleges. The application fees alone cost more than what I earned in an entire week at the theater. And here's the part that hurt the most. They acted like this was completely normal, as if treating their 2 daughters in entirely different ways was just the natural order of things. Whenever relatives quietly pointed out the difference, Karen would smile politely and say, "Each girl has different needs. Hannah is very independent and responsible. Chloe needs more support." What she really meant was simple. Hannah can manage on her own. Chloe deserves to be taken care of. The only person who ever challenged this was Aunt Rose, my dad's sister. She was the one who sent me graduation gifts, the one who never forgot my birthday, the one who asked about my life like it actually mattered. She never had children of her own, but she treated me like I was something precious. And after growing up in that house, that feeling was life-changing. When I graduated college with my nursing degree, magna cum laude, and completely debt-free thanks to scholarships and working through school, the family celebration was a simple dinner at Appleby. When Chloe graduated high school with a barely passing average, they threw her a party that cost more than my car. By the time I finally moved out, I had learned not to expect much from them. Christmas and birthday gifts were always practical things I needed anyway. Holiday gatherings were events I attended, but never truly belonged to. Family vacations were planned around my availability, not something I was actually invited to enjoy. That's why Aunt Rose meant so much to me. She was the only one who ever made me feel like I was truly part of the family. By the time I turned 25, my life looked nothing like theirs. I was a single mother, working as a pediatric nurse, living in a small apartment with my 4-year-old son, Lucas. His father disappeared the moment he found out about the pregnancy, leaving me to handle everything on my own, which, honestly, was exactly what I had come to expect by then. The apartment was small but tidy, filled with second-hand furniture and toys bought from garage sales. Lucas didn't care that his high chair came from a thrift store. He didn't care that his bedroom was really just a corner of the living room separated by a bright, colorful curtain. To him, it was home. He was happy, healthy, and deeply loved, and for me, that was all that truly mattered. My family's relationship with Lucas was complicated. They all claimed to adore him, of course. Karen loved posting his photos on Facebook, writing captions about being the world's best grandmother. But when it came to actually helping, like watching him so I could take extra shifts at work, they were somehow always unavailable. Chloe, now attending a college that cost more per year than I earned, would occasionally stop by. She'd play with Lucas for about an hour before sighing dramatically and talking about how exhausting kids were. My dad visited about once a month. He'd bring a small toy, stay just long enough to feel like he'd fulfilled his role as a grandfather, and then leave. The only person who showed up, over and over again, was Aunt Rose. Every few weeks, she'd drive nearly 2 hours from her home just to spend the weekend with us. She arrived with homemade cookies, new storybooks for Lucas, and genuine curiosity about our lives. She babysat without being asked, helped with small household repairs, and treated both my son and me like we truly mattered. When Lucas was 3 and came down with pneumonia, severe enough to require a week-long hospital stay, she took time off work without hesitation. She slept in the stiff hospital chair. She brought me clean clothes. She held Lucas whenever I needed a moment to shower or eat. My own father visited twice that entire week. Both visits lasted less than an hour. That was the moment everything became clear. Family wasn't about sharing a last name or growing up under the same roof. Family was about who showed up when life got difficult. Last year, when Aunt Rose called and told me she'd been diagnosed with breast cancer, I didn't pause for a second. "What do you need?" I asked right away. "When are your appointments? Who's taking you to treatment?" The answer, unsurprisingly, was no one. My dad was too busy with work. Karen already had commitments related to Chloe's college life. And Chloe was, apparently, too young to deal with something so serious. So I stepped in. For 6 months, twice a week, I became Rose's driver, her advocate, and her support system. After finishing my shifts, I'd buckle Lucas into his car seat and drive 2 hours to Rose's house, then another hour to the cancer center. We'd spend 3 hours there for treatment, drive an hour back to her place, and then 2 more hours home. Lucas learned how to quietly entertain himself in hospital waiting rooms, coloring in books that Rose always made sure to buy for him. During the worst days of chemotherapy, I stayed overnight. I made sure she ate, took her medication, and didn't lose her balance. Lucas would curl up beside her on the couch, gently patting her bald head with his small hand. "Aunt Rose is brave," Lucas would whisper to me softly. "Yes," I'd tell him, kissing the top of his head. "She really is." And she deserved far more from her family than what she'd been given. The night Rose completed her final round of chemotherapy was one of the most meaningful nights of my life. We sat together in her living room, Lucas asleep between us. She reached for my hand, her grip stronger than it had been in months. "You saved my life," she said quietly. "Not just in a medical sense, though your nursing skills certainly helped," she added. "You showed up when everyone else had excuses. You made me feel loved when I felt invisible." I squeezed her hand gently. "That's what family does," I said. "Real family, this is how people take care of each other." Her eyes filled with tears. "Your father called me twice during the entire 6 months," she said bitterly. "Twice." Karen sent a card. Chloe texted now and then. She shook her head slowly. "But you," she continued, her voice tightening, "working full-time, raising a child on your own, you still found a way to be here every single time I needed you." The anger in her voice startled me. Rose had always been the diplomat, the peacekeeper, the one who softened uncomfortable truths and smoothed over family tension. But cancer, it seemed, had burned away her tolerance for pretending everything was fine. "After Thomas died," she went on, referring to her husband who had passed away 3 years earlier, "I started thinking about my will. He made sure I was well provided for, and since we never had children, I always planned to leave everything to your father." She paused. "I assumed he'd take care of Chloe and help you when you needed it." My stomach tightened as I sensed where the conversation was heading. "But this experience," she said firmly, "has shown me who truly deserves my consideration." I shifted uncomfortably. "Rose, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," she interrupted gently but firmly. "You need to understand something, Hannah. I've watched your family dynamics for years. I made excuses for them. I kept hoping things would improve." She shook her head. "They haven't. If anything, they've gotten worse." She was right. Even during her cancer treatment, a time when you'd expect family to come together, nothing really changed. My dad would call me for updates about Rose's condition instead of calling her directly. Karen would ask me to pass along messages instead of picking up the phone herself. The same patterns. The same distance. The same indifference. They treated me like nothing more than a middleman, a convenient messenger between them and Rose, instead of acknowledging that I was the one actually taking care of her. As Rose's hair slowly began to grow back and her strength returned, her outlook shifted. She started making plans again. "I'm going to travel," she announced one afternoon with a smile. "All the places Thomas and I always talked about but never got the chance to visit. I'm starting with Europe this spring. 3 months. I want to see everything." I was genuinely happy for her. After everything she had endured, she deserved every bit of joy and freedom waiting for her. Still, the thought of her being gone made my chest ache. Rose was my anchor in this family, the one person who reminded me that I mattered, that I was worthy of love and respect. "Before I leave," she said one day, "I want to do something special for your birthday. Turning 28 is important. You're stepping into your late 20s. I already have plans. My birthday was in October, and Rose left for Europe shortly after, toward the end of the month. She had beaten cancer and was finally living the life she had once only imagined. Her postcards arrived every week. Stories of art museums in Paris, quiet beaches in Greece, and unforgettable meals in Italy. She sounded lighter, happier than I had ever known her to be. 3 days before my birthday, a delivery truck pulled up outside my apartment building. I wasn't expecting anything, so I was confused when the driver handed me a clipboard and asked for my signature. My name and address were printed clearly on the label. The package was from Rose, stamped and postmarked from Europe. Inside was a small jewelry box. Nestled inside, it was a simple silver keychain with a tiny heart charm, along with a handwritten note. Happy birthday, sweetheart. This is just something small to hold you over until I'm back to give you your real present. All my love. Aunt Rose. It wasn't expensive or flashy, but knowing she had thought of me while wandering through historic streets and famous landmarks made it perfect. I clipped it onto my keys immediately and carried it with me everywhere, just like I later mentioned at Christmas dinner. What I didn't realize at the time was that this little keychain wasn't meant to be the main gift at all. It was only a placeholder, an afterthought for something far, far bigger. October 28th, my birthday came and went quietly. I worked a double shift at the hospital because the holiday pay would help cover Christmas expenses for Lucas. When I finally got home, exhausted but thankful for the extra income, I noticed a voicemail. It was my dad, wishing me a happy birthday and apologizing for forgetting to call earlier. Apparently, Karen had reminded him. Chloe sent a text message filled with cake emojis. No card. No present. No invitation to dinner. Just brief acknowledgments that, yes, this was the day I had been born 28 years earlier. It wasn't unexpected, but it still stung, just a little. At 4 years old, Lucas had made me a birthday card at daycare using construction paper. It had his tiny handprints stamped on the front and the words "I love Mommy" spelled out in glittery letters. That gift meant more to me than anything money could buy. That evening, I called Aunt Rose using the international number she'd given me for emergencies. I got the keychain, I told her, rubbing my thumb over the small silver heart. It's beautiful. Thank you for thinking of me while you're traveling. Oh, sweetheart, she laughed, her voice warm and layered with something I couldn't quite place. That little thing is nothing. Just wait until you see what I really got you. What I actually got you, she continued, is going to change your life. I assumed she meant a nice piece of jewelry or maybe something meaningful from one of the countries she was visiting. Rose had always been generous, but never flashy. A scarf from Ireland or a cookbook from Italy would have been more than enough to make me happy. November flew by. Her postcards kept arriving, each one describing a new adventure. She sounded energized, joyful, like she was reclaiming all the time cancer had stolen from her. In one card, she casually mentioned that she'd asked my dad to take care of something important for her while she was away. Something related to my birthday present. I found that a little strange. Rose usually handled her own affairs, and she had never involved my father in gift-giving before. Still, I brushed it off. I figured it was something simple, maybe arranging delivery or helping ship something too large to send internationally. December arrived with the usual holiday chaos. My work schedule intensified as other nurses took time off, and I saved every spare dollar for Lucas's Christmas gifts. We had started our own traditions, opening our advent calendar each night, reading Christmas stories, drinking hot chocolate, and walking around the neighborhood to look at the lights. During that time, I noticed Chloe posting photos on social media that looked like they were taken in a brand new apartment. The pictures showed a beautiful space, modern furniture, huge windows, and decorations that looked expensive and carefully chosen. When I mentioned it to my dad during one of our short phone calls, He said Chloe had gotten an amazing opportunity to house sit for someone who was traveling overseas. Lucky her, I said without thinking much about it. Chloe always seemed to land on her feet. When she needed an internship for college, Corinne's friend just happened to have an opening at her marketing firm. When she needed a summer job, my dad's business partner suddenly needed an assistant. Chloe moved through life with invisible hands constantly smoothing the road in front of her. Meanwhile, Lucas and I were planning our own simple Christmas. We made paper snowflakes to decorate the apartment and decided we'd buy a small tree from the lot down the street. I'd managed to save enough to get him the Lego set he'd been asking for, along with a few smaller surprises. It wasn't going to be fancy, but it was going to be full of love. The invitation to Christmas dinner at my dad and Corinne's house came in mid-December, just like it did every year. The same brief, impersonal phone call. "We're having dinner at 3, Corinne said flatly. "And Rose is flying back as a surprise. She wanted to spend Christmas with the family." My heart skipped. I hadn't seen Aunt Rose since before her trip, and I missed her more than I realized. The idea of having her there instantly made the whole dinner feel worth attending. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe with Rose there, I wouldn't feel like an afterthought, just someone invited out of obligation. I even allowed myself to hope that I might actually feel like part of the family. I spent money I really couldn't spare on a nice dress for the dinner and bought a small gift for everyone. Lucas was thrilled at the thought of seeing his gray tant again, and eager to discover which new books she'd inevitably bring him from her travels. What I didn't know was that Rose's surprise return was about to uncover a betrayal that would completely change how I saw my family. Christmas morning arrived cold and bright. Lucas woke me up at 6, bouncing on my bed with pure excitement about Santa's visit. We opened our modest stack of gifts beside the little tree, and the joy on his face when he unwrapped the Lego set made every extra shift I'd worked feel worth it. As I got ready for dinner at my dad and Corinne's house, I felt something unexpected: hope. Rose's postcards over the past 3 months had been filled with stories of discovery and freedom. Maybe her new outlook would bring a shift in the family dynamic. Maybe this Christmas would finally be the turning point I'd quietly wished for throughout my adult life. Lucas looked adorable in his small button-down shirt and tiny khakis, clutching the dinosaur book Santa had brought him. "Will Aunt Rose have presents from faraway places?" he asked as we drove toward the house where I'd grown up. "I'm sure she'll have wonderful stories," I told him gently, "and maybe something special. But remember, spending time together is the real gift." The house looked exactly the same as it had every Christmas since Corinne moved in. White string lights glowed softly, silver and gold ornaments were placed with perfect symmetry, and everything matched down to the smallest detail. Christmas music played quietly in the background, and the dining table was laid out with Corinne's finest china. Chloe was already there. She was wearing a brand-new designer dress and shoes that probably cost more than my entire monthly grocery budget. "Hannah." My dad hugged me warmly, and for just a moment, I let myself believe it was real, genuine family affection. "And Lucas," he added with a smile, "look at you, buddy, you've grown so much." Corinne leaned in and air-kissed near both of my cheeks, careful not to smudge her makeup. "You look lovely," she said, using the polite, distant tone she reserved for being civil. "Chloe, been telling us all about her new living arrangement," Corinne continued. Chloe lit up immediately, launching into an enthusiastic explanation. "It's amazing," she said, practically glowing. "It's in the best part of downtown. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and floor-to-ceiling windows with the most incredible view. The owner left it fully furnished. Everything is beautiful. I feel like I'm living inside a magazine." I made the appropriate impressed sounds while setting Lucas up in the living room with his coloring books. Chloe had always landed on her feet. House-sitting a luxury apartment felt exactly like the kind of opportunity that naturally fell into her lap. "Speaking of apartments," my dad said, glancing toward Karen. How's your housing situation going? Still renting near the hospital? It's working fine, I replied carefully. I'd learned long ago not to mention financial stress around them. Any hint of struggle was always met with lectures about budgeting or lifestyle choices, as if single motherhood on a nurse's salary was just a planning error. The doorbell rang precisely at 2:30. Karen rushed to answer it. Surprise. The voice was instantly familiar. There stood Aunt Rose, sun-kissed, glowing, rolling a suitcase behind her, wearing the brightest smile I'd seen in years. Aunt Rose. Lucas ran straight into her legs, and she scooped him up effortlessly, laughing as if she'd missed him just as much. My precious boy, she said, hugging him tight. You've gotten so tall. Then she pulled me into a long embrace. And my sweet Hannah, she said softly, I've missed you both so much. She looked incredible. The frailty from chemotherapy was gone, replaced by strength from months of walking through European cities. Her hair had grown back thicker than before, and her face carried the glow of someone who had spent time truly living. How was your trip? I asked, my voice full of genuine happiness. Your postcards made it sound unbelievable. It was everything I dreamed of, she said, her eyes sparkling, and even more. But I was ready to come home, Aunt Rose said warmly, to the people I love the most. For the next hour, she kept us all captivated with stories from her travels. She talked about hiking parts of the Camino de Santiago, taking cooking classes in Tuscany, and spending entire days wandering through museums she had only ever read about before. With her there, the entire atmosphere felt lighter. The family seemed more at ease, as if her presence reminded them how to actually enjoy being together. When we finally sat down for dinner, Rose caught my eye across the table and gave me a small wink. I have something very special I want to share with everyone, she said. But first, let's enjoy Karen's beautiful meal. The conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years. Even Chloe seemed less self-absorbed, genuinely interested in Rose's adventures. For the first time in a long while, I felt myself relax, remembering what family dinners could feel like when they weren't weighed down by tension. And then I said the thing that changed everything. I reached across the table and gently squeezed Rose's hand. Aunt Rose, I said sincerely, thank you so much for the keychain you sent me for my birthday. It's beautiful. I carry it everywhere. The silence that followed wasn't warm or peaceful. It was the kind of silence that comes right before something explodes, thick, heavy, and filled with secrets about to surface. Rose slowly set her fork down. Something in her expression told me, instantly, that this Christmas dinner was about to become unforgettable, and not in a good way. The quiet stretched on, far too long. Her fork hovered above her plate. Her eyes moved slowly from my face to my dad's, then to Karen's, and finally to Chloe. It felt like one of those moments in movies when the background music cuts out and every small sound becomes painfully loud. The ticking of the clock, someone's uneven breathing, the faint clink of ice shifting in a glass. Keychain, Rose repeated slowly, as if tasting the word. Hannah, sweetheart, what keychain are you talking about? Confused, I opened my purse and pulled it out, holding up the simple silver chain with the small heart charm. This one, I said softly. You sent it for my birthday, with that note saying it was just something to hold me over until you got back. Rose stared at the keychain like it was something dangerous. Then she looked around the table again. I watched as her face changed, the warmth from her travels disappearing, replaced by something I had never seen before. Pure, controlled fury. I didn't send you a keychain, she said quietly. I bought you a $400,000 apartment. The words hit the table like a physical blow. Chloe's phone slipped from her hand, clattering onto her plate. Karen's wine glass tipped over, red wine spreading across the white tablecloth like spilled blood. My dad's face shifted through several shades before finally settling into a dull gray. And me. I just sat there, blinking like a fool. Surely I had misheard. Surely my 70-year-old aunt hadn't just said she bought me an apartment worth more than I could earn in a decade. Surely this was some kind of European joke I wasn't in on. "I'm sorry, what?" I managed to say. Rose's voice was calm, too calm, deadly calm. "Before I left for Europe, I called your father," she said, her eyes locked on him. "I told him I wanted to do something special for your birthday, something big. You spent 6 months caring for me during the worst period of my life, driving 4 hours round trip twice a week, staying overnight when I was too weak to be alone, bringing Lucas to chemo appointments because you couldn't afford a babysitter." Now she looked directly at my dad, and he shrank back in his chair like a child being scolded. "I found a beautiful apartment downtown," Rose continued. 2 bedrooms, perfect for you and Lucas. Safe neighborhood, good schools, close to the hospital where you work. I put down the full purchase price and had the deed transferred to your name. My brain couldn't process it. An apartment. A real apartment. With my name on the deed. But Chloe had said she was house-sitting. House-sitting, Rose's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Chloe, sweetheart, whose apartment have you been living in the past 2 months?" Chloe's confident facade crumbled. She turned to Karen, panic written all over her face like a child caught breaking something priceless. "Mom, you promised me," she wailed. "What exactly did she promise you?" Rose asked, her voice ice-cold. And then it all came spilling out. Chloe's tears weren't delicate or pretty. They were ugly, frantic sobs from someone whose entire world was collapsing. "Mom said you'd never find out. She said Aunt Rose would be traveling for months, and by the time she returned, you'd be settled in, and I'd just have to accept it," she blubbered. I had to admit, the audacity was almost impressive. Take a gift meant for me, give it to the golden child, and frame it as fairness because I already had somewhere to live. You know, my tiny 2-bedroom rental, where Lucas and I share the living room because his bedroom is actually a converted closet. Finally, my dad found his voice, though it sounded more like a croak than actual speech. I can explain," he began. Karen jumped in. "I convinced him it would just be temporary until we could buy Chloe her own place. I thought we'd have time to explain everything to you when you got back." "Oh, please do," Rose said, leaning back in her chair. "Explain to me how you took an apartment I bought for Hannah and decided Chloe should live in it instead. Explain to me how you forged thank you notes in her name." "Yes, Richard," she continued, her voice sharp. "I received 3 lovely letters from Hannah thanking me for the apartment, saying how happy and settled she was there." My mouth dropped open. They had written thank you notes. They actually sat down and pretended to be me, expressing gratitude for a gift they had stolen. The planning behind it was staggering. "We were going to tell her eventually," Karen jumped in, and I almost laughed at how predictable she is. When caught red-handed, she always has a timeline ready to make everything seem acceptable. "We thought Chloe needed the space for college, just for a few years. Hannah is so independent. She's been managing fine on her own. We were planning to give her the apartment after Chloe graduated." "In 4 years," I said flatly. "You were going to give me my own birthday present in 4 years." "It's not like that," my dad said desperately. "We just thought practical considerations, Chloe's education." And there it was, the same old refrain. Chloe's needs always came first. Chloe's future always mattered more. Chloe deserved the better option simply because she's Chloe, the golden child who never had to work for anything, never had to sacrifice, never had to choose between buying groceries and paying rent. I looked around the table, at these people I'd called family for 24 years. My dad squirming in his chair, avoiding my gaze. Karen frantically calculating how to spin this into something acceptable. Chloe still sobbing, acting like she was the one wronged. And in that moment, something surprising happened. For the first time in my adult life, I felt completely calm. Not hurt, not angry, just clear, like someone had handed me glasses after years of trying to see through a dirty window. Rose stood slowly, her hands trembling with barely controlled fury. When she spoke, her voice shook with emotion. "So, all three of you knew this apartment belonged to Hannah and decided to take it anyway. Is that what I'm understanding here?" My dad looked genuinely stunned. "Rose, we never meant." "I want the keys to that apartment right now," she said, cutting him off. "Rose, please," my dad pleaded. "Let's discuss this rationally." She laughed, and it was not a pleasant sound. "You want to talk about rationality?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Let's discuss how rational it was to steal from your own daughter. Let's talk about how rational it was to lie to me and to her for 2 whole months. Let's talk about how rational it is for Chloe to be living in an apartment that isn't hers," Rose said, her tone slicing through the room. Chloe's face crumpled in genuine panic. "We were supposed to have more time," she stammered. "You weren't supposed to, at dinner, thank her." "Chloe," Rose's voice was ice cold. "Your mother lied to you. That apartment was never meant for you. It was purchased specifically for Hannah, with her name on the deed, as a thank you for taking care of me when the rest of this family couldn't be bothered." The truth hit the table like a physical slap. While I had been driving Rose to chemo appointments, staying overnight when she was too weak to be alone, and bringing Lucas to waiting rooms because I couldn't afford babysitters, where was everyone else? Dad was too busy with work. Karen was overwhelmed with Chloe's college preparations. Chloe was supposedly too young to handle serious matters, but somehow she found time to take credit for my gift. Rose's voice sharpened. "Linda, let me finish. Would you like me to call the police and explain the situation? Because I have documentation of the purchase, the deed transfer, and copies of every forged letter you sent in Hannah's name." The threat of legal action shifted the energy in the room immediately. Dad's face turned pale. Even Chloe stopped sniffling. Karen fumbled through her purse and produced a set of keys, laying them on the table like she was surrendering a weapon. Rose picked them up and turned to me. "Hannah, would you like to see your apartment?" Would I like to see my apartment? The apartment I didn't even know existed until 5 minutes ago. The apartment that had been mine for 2 months, while I was paying rent on a tiny place, where my 4-year-old sleeps in a converted closet. "Yes," I said quietly. "Yes, I think I would." As I rose to follow Rose, Chloe grabbed my arm. "Hannah, please, you have to understand. I didn't know it was meant for you specifically. I thought it was just family property, and Mom decided I should use it for college." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then at her face. For a moment, I saw the little girl who used to trail after me when she was small, before Karen taught her that we weren't really sisters, just 2 people who happened to live in the same house. "Chloe," I said gently, "did you really not know the apartment was specifically meant for me?" Her eyes flickered nervously. "Look, we all knew you. Never fight back. You never do. Mom said you just accept it eventually, like you always do with everything else." The honesty was staggering. They hadn't just stolen from me. They had calculated that I would be too passive to stand up for myself. I gently removed Chloe's hand from my arm. "But this time, you were wrong." Rose was already by the door, car keys in hand. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" she asked. Lucas had been remarkably quiet throughout the entire confrontation, absorbed in his dinosaur book, occasionally glancing at the adults with the patient, resigned expression of a child who knows grown-ups often make no sense. I gathered him up along with his books. "We're going to see a new place," I told him as I buckled him into his car seat. "Aunt Rose has a surprise for us." Pulling out of the driveway, I caught sight of Karen and Chloe standing in the doorway, watching us leave. Dad was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in his study like he always does whenever family matters get uncomfortable, waiting for someone else to fix the problem. The drive downtown took about 20 minutes, during which Rose filled in the details I'd been missing. The apartment was in a converted historic building. with original hardwood floors and huge windows. It was within walking distance of Lucas's daycare and a short commute to the hospital. The streets were lined with mature trees, there was a small park nearby, and the kind of local coffee shop where everyone actually knows your name. I looked at dozens of places, Rose said as we drove through increasingly upscale neighborhoods. But when I saw this one, I just knew it was perfect for you. It felt like home. We pulled up in front of a beautiful brick building with black shutters and flower boxes on the windows. It was the kind of place I had walked past before, daydreaming about living there, but had never seriously considered because it was so far out of my budget. "Third floor," Rose said, leading us toward the entrance. "Corner unit with views of the park." The elevator was small and charming, with brass buttons and wood paneling. Lucas excitedly pressed the button for the third floor, bouncing in his seat. When the doors opened, Rose led us to a door marked 3C and unlocked it with the keys she had taken from Karen. The door swung open, and I stepped into the most beautiful living space I had ever seen. The apartment wasn't stunning because it was fancy or expensive. It was stunning because it was perfect. Warm hardwood floors stretched through the open living area, which was flooded with natural light from tall windows. The kitchen had crisp white cabinets and granite countertops that gleamed as if they had never been used. Through the living room windows, I could see the park Rose had mentioned, mature trees, a playground where children were playing, even in the December cold. 2 bedrooms, Rose said, leading us down a hallway. This one would be Lucas's. Lucas's new room was twice the size of our current living room. It had built-in bookshelves, a large closet, and windows facing east, so he would wake up to the morning sun. He immediately ran to the window and pressed his small face against the glass. "Mommy, look, swings," he exclaimed, eyes wide with wonder. The master bedroom took my breath away. Spacious without being overwhelming, with enough room for a real dresser, maybe even a cozy reading chair. The closet was bigger than Lucas's current sleeping space. But what really stole my attention was the bathroom. A full bath with a deep soaking tub, perfect for unwinding after exhausting shifts at the hospital. "The previous tenant left some furniture," Rose explained as we walked back to the living area. "Basic pieces I thought you might want to keep." That's when I noticed the apartment wasn't empty. There was a sectional sofa in soft gray fabric, a coffee table that looked like real wood, and a dining set that could comfortably seat 6. The kitchen was stocked with dishes, cookware, and even small appliances. But these weren't the basic pieces Rose had mentioned. These were beautiful, high-quality items, the kind of furniture I would drool over in stores but never buy because it cost more than I earned in a month. "Rose," I said slowly, letting the words hang, "this furniture is brand new." She smiled sheepishly. "I may have gone a little overboard with the move-in preparations. I wanted you to be able to walk in and feel at home right away." I sank onto the sofa, and it was exactly as comfortable as it looked. Lucas climbed up beside me, already claiming his favorite spot. "Mommy, is this our new house?" he asked. I think it might be," I told him quietly, still struggling to believe it was real. My phone rang, startling me back to reality. Dad's name appeared on the screen, and Rose nodded at me to answer. "Hannah, where are you?" His voice was tight with stress. "We need to talk about this situation." "What situation, Dad?" "You know what I mean, the apartment thing. We can work this out. Maybe Chloe can stay there just until the end of the semester. Then we'll transition." I looked around the beautiful living room, Lucas arranging his dinosaur figures on the coffee table, Rose watching me with encouraging eyes. "No," I said firmly. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, no. Chloe cannot stay here until the end of the semester. There will be no transition period. No, we cannot work this out. This apartment belongs to me. It has been mine for 2 months while I was paying rent somewhere else because you decided your daughter deserved my gift more than I did." "Hannah, be reasonable," Dad pleaded. "Chloe has already moved in, started classes from that location. Her entire routine is built around living there. The audacity was breathtaking. They stole my apartment, let Chloe settle in, built her life around it, and then expected me to be reasonable about disrupting her routine. Where exactly did you think I was living? I demanded. Did you assume I'd just vanish when you gave away my home? Silence followed on the other end. Chloe can move out this week, I said, my voice steady, leaving no room for negotiation. I continued, my voice steady. Chloe can take her personal things, but everything else stays. The furniture, the kitchen supplies, the linens, everything you bought with money you should have spent elsewhere remains in my apartment. You can't just kick her out with nowhere to go. Dad's voice protested weakly over the phone. Watch me, I said, hanging up and turning off my phone. Rose was beaming with pride. I haven't heard you sound this strong in years, she said. She was right. I sounded different even to myself, calmer, but firmer, like I had finally found the backbone I'd been searching for 31 years. What happens now? I asked. Now you move in this weekend if you want. I'll help you pack your old place, Rose said. She paused, then added, and Hannah, they're going to keep calling, keep making demands, keep trying to guilt you into backing down. Don't let them. I won't, I said, and this time I actually believed it. Lucas had discovered the refrigerator, which was fully stocked. Mommy, there's ice cream in here, he exclaimed. Of course there is, I said. Rose had thought of everything, even stocking the freezer with a 4-year-old's favorite treats. As Lucas chattered about the ice cream flavors he'd discovered, my phone began buzzing with texts. Karen, Chloe, even my father's business partner, someone who had never contacted me directly before. I didn't read them. Instead, I walked to the large living room windows and gazed out at the park where children played, at the tree-lined streets where people walked dogs and carried coffee cups. This was the neighborhood where my son and I were going to build a real life. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. Moving in took just one weekend. When you don't own much furniture, relocating is surprisingly simple. Our old apartment suddenly felt tiny and depressing when compared to this new space. The contrast was almost comical, like comparing a closet to a palace. Lucas adapted with the resilience of a small child. He treated the move like an adventure, not an upheaval. He ran from room to room, claiming spaces and announcing his plans. This is where my dinosaurs will live, he declared, pointing at the built-in shelves in his new bedroom. This is where I'll eat my cereal, he added about the breakfast bar in the kitchen. Rose helped with everything, packing boxes, setting up utilities in my name. She'd thought of details I hadn't even considered, registering Lucas in the school district, finding a pediatrician nearby, locating the nearest grocery store and dry cleaner. You don't have to do all this, I told her, watching her organize the kitchen cabinets with military precision. Yes, I do, she replied firmly. Your family stole 2 months of your life in that place. I'm just trying to make up for lost time. The calls from Dad, Karen, and Chloe continued without pause. Voice messages shifted in tone, first apologetic, then demanding, then outright hostile. I had listened to the first few. They all followed the same predictable pattern. Acknowledgement that mistakes were made, followed by an explanation of why Chloe's needs should still come first, ending with accusations that I was being selfish and unreasonable. By the 5th message, I stopped listening. On Wednesday evening, a week after we'd moved in, Dad appeared at my door. No call ahead, no text asking if it was convenient. He just showed up in my hallway, acting like he had a right to be there. We need to talk, he said as I opened the door. No, we don't, I replied, starting to close it. Lydia, please, 5 minutes, he begged. Against my better judgment, I let him in. Lucas was already in his pajamas, watching cartoons on the flat-screen TV in the apartment, larger than our entire kitchen in the old place. Nice place, Dad said, looking around as though he were mentally calculating square footage and monthly costs. Really nice. But here's the thing, sweetheart, he continued, his voice softening. Chloe is struggling. And there it was, the same old playbook. When logical arguments fail, appeal to my emotional guilt. Usually, it had been about Chloe needing help with homework, a ride somewhere, or some social drama that required the family to rearrange schedules. Struggling how? I asked, genuinely curious about the manufactured crisis this time. She's living in a dorm room the size of a shoebox, sharing a bathroom with 20 other girls. The cafeteria food is making her sick. She can't concentrate on her studies because the conditions are so awful. I blinked at him. You mean, she's living like a normal college student? It's not the same thing, he said quickly. Why isn't it the same thing, Dad? He fumbled for an answer that wouldn't make him sound completely hypocritical. She's not used to those conditions. She's never had to live like that before. And whose fault is that? I asked, sharper than intended, but I didn't feel sorry for it. Who made the choice that Chloe should never experience discomfort or inconvenience? Who created a 20-year-old who falls apart when faced with standard college living conditions? We just want what's best for her, he said. What about what's best for me? I shot back. The words hung in the air. When exactly did you want what was best for me, Dad? His face flushed red. That's not fair, he said defensively. We've always cared about your well-being. Really, I said quietly. When I was 16 and needed a car to get to my job, where was your concern for my well-being? When I worked double shifts to pay my own way through college, while Emma's tuition was handed to her, where was it then? When I was a single mother struggling to pay rent while also taking care of your sister through cancer treatments, where exactly was your concern for what was best for me? He sighed, frustrated. Those situations were different. How? You've always been more independent, more capable. Emma needs more support. And there it was. The truth of my family dynamic spoken out loud for the first time. Emma needed support because she was delicate. I didn't need support because I was strong. Emma deserved help because she struggled with normal life challenges. I deserved to struggle alone because I could handle it. That twisted logic had shaped my entire life. Every time I succeeded without help, it proved I didn't need any. Every time Emma failed with help, it proved she needed more. Dad, I said quietly, my voice steady, I need you to leave now. Lydia, come on. Can't we work something out? Maybe Emma could use the second bedroom when she needs to study, or stay here on weekends when the dorm is too loud. Get out. Don't be unreasonable. Get out. The sharpness of my own voice surprised me. Danny looked up from his cartoons, eyes wide. I almost never raised my voice, especially not at family. Dad stared at me like I'd struck him. I don't know what's happened to you, he said bitterly. This isn't the daughter I raised. You're absolutely right, I said calmly, walking to the door and opening it. The daughter you raised would have handed the keys to Emma by now. She would have moved into a studio apartment and apologized for causing trouble. She would have paid rent for 4 more years, while Emma lived in the home that was meant for her. He hesitated, clearly wanting to argue. But something in my face must have stopped him. This isn't over, he said as he stepped into the hallway. Yes, Dad, I replied evenly. It is. I closed the door and locked it, then I locked it again. Through the peephole, I watched him stand there for several long moments, debating whether to knock. Eventually, he walked away. Danny looked up at me. Was Grandpa angry? Grandpa was confused, I said honestly. Sometimes grown-ups get confused when things don't go the way they expect. Are we in trouble? I sat down beside him on our sectional sofa, in our bright, peaceful apartment, in the neighborhood where we belonged. No, baby, I said softly, wrapping an arm around him. We're not in trouble. I looked around the room, the sunlight, the quiet, the safety. We're exactly where we're supposed to be. The legal transfer of the apartment happened on a Tuesday morning at Rose's lawyer's office. I had never owned property before, and signing documents that officially made me the owner of something worth $400,000 felt completely surreal. Rose had insisted on making everything legally airtight, ensuring that no one could ever question my right to live there. "Congratulations," the lawyer said, handing me a thick folder with the deeds, insurance papers, and maintenance agreements. "You're officially a property owner." Property owner. At 31, after years of renting cramped apartments and worrying about lease renewals, I finally owned a home. Not just any home, a beautiful place in a neighborhood where children played safely in parks and neighbors knew each other's names. The financial relief was immediate and intoxicating. Without rent to pay, my nursing salary finally stretched far enough to cover necessities and the small luxuries I'd never allowed myself. Lucas's daycare costs became manageable instead of crushing. I could buy groceries without calculating every item. For the first time in years, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. Meanwhile, Emma's adjustment to dorm life was rough, according to my sources. My cousin Sophie, who worked at the university, told me Emma had been to the housing office multiple times, requesting room changes. She complained about noise, bathroom cleanliness, and roommate conflicts. The girl who had lived a life of luxury was discovering what most college students considered normal. Sophie also mentioned that Emma went to the financial aid office, asking for extra housing support. When told her family income made her ineligible for need-based aid, she apparently broke down, crying to the counselor. "I was supposed to have my own apartment," she sobbed. "This isn't how it was supposed to work." The irony wasn't lost on me. For 20 years, Emma had been shielded from any real discomfort or responsibility. Now, faced with shared bathrooms, cafeteria food, and dorm life, she was genuinely shocked that money couldn't immediately fix everything. Meanwhile, my text messages from Emma had grown increasingly hostile. Her friends apparently convinced her I was being unreasonable and selfish. Messages ranged from pleading, "I just need somewhere quiet to study for finals," to accusatory, "You're ruining my college experience because you're jealous," to downright nasty, "Everyone thinks you're a terrible sister." I took screenshots of the worst ones and saved them in a folder labeled evidence, without responding to any of them. Margaret had warned me that Chloe would escalate before accepting the new reality. The escalation happened on a Thursday evening. Chloe showed up at my apartment building, crying dramatically in the lobby until Mrs. Parker on the first floor let her in. She knocked on my door with a persistent, demanding rhythm that made it clear she wouldn't give up easily. "Lydia, I know you're in there. We need to talk." I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. Chloe looked terrible, not the carefully styled perfection she usually maintained, but genuinely disheveled. Her hair was unwashed, clothes wrinkled, and dark circles framed her eyes. "You have to help me," she said immediately. "I can't live like this anymore. The dorm is horrible. My roommate snores. The bathrooms are disgusting. I can't concentrate on anything. My grades are suffering." "I'm sorry you're having a difficult time," I said calmly. Honestly, college dorms can be challenging to adjust to. "You don't understand. I never signed up for this. When I chose this university, I thought I'd be living in the downtown apartment. I planned my whole college experience around having my own space, my own kitchen, my own bathroom, and there it was." Chloe genuinely believed she had been promised the apartment all along. In her mind, it had always been meant for her, and my claiming it felt like theft. "Chloe," I said gently, "that apartment was never promised to you. It was my birthday gift from Aunt Margaret. You were living there illegally." "It's not illegal. Mom and Dad said I could live there." "Mom and Dad don't own that apartment," I said firmly. "They never owned it. They had no right to offer it to you." Her face crumpled into fresh tears. "But what am I supposed to do now? I can't live in the dorms for 4 more years. I'll go crazy." You'll adapt, I said simply. Millions of students live in dorms. Most of them survive just fine. Most of them weren't raised like you were. The honesty of my words hit her. Chloe was acknowledging, maybe for the first time, that she had been raised with privileges most young adults don't have, sheltered from the normal inconveniences everyone else faces. You're right, she admitted reluctantly. Most students weren't raised to think luxury housing is a basic right. Most work part-time to pay for college. Most share bathrooms, eat cafeteria food, and study in libraries because their rooms are too small or too noisy. Are you saying I should get a job? She asked, confusion written across her face. I almost laughed. Chloe, how do you think I paid for college? That's different, she replied quickly. You always worked. I was focused on my studies, she added. What's your GPA? I asked. She shifted uncomfortably, realizing this conversation was more serious than she expected. That's not it. It's not about grades, I said firmly. It's about the full college experience, social development, networking, learning responsibility. In other words, you've been coasting academically while living in an apartment you didn't deserve, funded by money that should have gone elsewhere. The full experience you're worried about losing, that's actually the life you stole from me. I'm not going to help you, Chloe, I said finally. You have housing. You have a meal plan. You have everything you need to succeed in college if you choose to apply yourself. What about what Dad said, about working something out where I could stay here sometimes? Dad doesn't make decisions about my home. Fine, she snapped, her tears drying up as anger took over. Keep your precious apartment, but don't expect me to forgive you for this. Don't expect me to ever speak to you again after college. I don't, I said honestly. I don't expect anything from you anymore, Chloe. And that was actually quite liberating. I closed the door gently but firmly, leaving her standing in the hallway. Through the peephole, I watched her pound a few more times before giving up and walking away. Later that evening, Dad called. His voice was tighter and more frustrated than I'd ever heard it. Chloe came home crying tonight, he said. She says you were cruel to her. I was honest with her, I said calmly. She's just a kid. Lydia, she's struggling with a major life change, he pressed. She's 20 years old, Dad. When I was 20, I was working full-time, going to school full-time, and raising Danny on my own. Chloe is struggling because she has to live like a normal college student for the first time in her life. We've decided she needs to get a part-time job, he said grudgingly, to help build character and responsibility. I nearly dropped the phone. After 20 years of protecting Chloe from any work or responsibility, they were finally making her earn her way because she could no longer rely on stolen luxury. That sounds like a good decision, I said. But she doesn't get to live here on weekends just because the dorm is uncomfortable. Dad, stop. What? Stop trying to negotiate. Stop trying to find compromises. Stop acting like Chloe's comfort is more important than basic honesty and fairness. The apartment is mine. It will always be mine. She will never live here, not on weekends, not during finals, not in emergencies. You're being unreasonable. I'm being clear, there's a difference. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. Finally, he sighed deeply. I don't know what's happened to our family. What happened? I asked quietly. Is that someone finally pointed out that we've never actually been a family, that we've been a hierarchy with Chloe at the top, you and Linda in the middle, and me at the bottom. The only difference now is that I'm not participating anymore. I hung up before he could respond. Months later, I'm sitting in the breakfast nook of my apartment, drinking coffee and watching Danny build elaborate Lego cities on the dining room table, a table that actually has enough space for his projects. Morning sunlight streams through the east-facing windows, just as Aunt Maggie promised. I can hear children laughing and playing in the park across the street. My life has settled into a rhythm I never imagined possible. Work no longer feels crushing because I'm not constantly worried about money. Danny is thriving at his new school, where teachers know his name and classmates invite him to birthday parties. Our evenings are calm instead of stressful, filled with homework at the kitchen table and bedtime stories in his bright, spacious bedroom. The financial change has been life-altering. Without rent payments, I've started a savings account for the first time in my adult life. I buy Danny clothes that actually fit instead of hand-me-downs from older cousins. I can take him to movies, museums, and other outings without worrying if there'll be enough for groceries afterward. Even more profound has been the emotional change. I feel calmer, more confident, more present. When colleagues at the hospital comment on how different I seem, I tell them I finally learned the difference between being independent and being abandoned. The family situation has reached a predictable balance. Chloe eventually got a part-time job at a coffee shop near her campus. According to my cousin Sarah, she complains endlessly about weekend shifts and difficult customers. Her grades improved slightly once she had to develop real study habits, but she still insists her college experience is ruined because she's living like a normal student. Dad and Linda have apparently told extended family members that I'm going through a rough patch, and they're giving me space to work through my issues. This allows them to preserve the image of being reasonable parents dealing with an unreasonable daughter. I don't bother correcting anyone anymore. Margaret and I have grown even closer, bonded by the shared experience of my family's betrayal. She splits her time between traveling and spoiling Danny, who now calls her his adventure grandma because she brings him treasures from every trip. Last month, she took us both to Disney World for a long weekend, Danny's first real vacation. Emma's text messages eventually stopped, probably because I never responded. Dad still calls occasionally, usually about some family event he thinks I should attend for Danny's sake. I decline politely but firmly. Danny has plenty of family in Margaret, plenty of friends at school, and plenty of love at home. He doesn't need exposure to people who treated his mother like disposable furniture. The most surprising development has been my relationship with extended family. Cousins and aunts who always seemed distant have reached out after hearing Margaret's version of events. Apparently, my immediate family's treatment of me had been obvious to outsiders for years, but no one felt comfortable commenting directly. "We always wondered why you seemed so careful around them," my cousin Rachel said during a recent phone call. "Like you were afraid of taking up too much space or asking for attention." Because that was exactly what I was doing. I'd spent 31 years trying to prove I deserved to exist in my own family, moderating my needs, minimizing my presence, making myself small enough to fit into the leftover spaces of their attention. Not anymore. This morning's mail brought a wedding invitation from a college friend. For the first time in years, I can afford to buy a thoughtful gift and travel to celebrate with her. Tonight, Danny and I are going to the Children's Theater downtown, something we never could have managed before. This weekend, we're hosting Aunt Maggie for dinner in our beautiful dining room, using the nice dishes that came with the apartment. These aren't dramatic victories or life-changing moments. They're just normal experiences of a stable, comfortable life. But after years of struggle and uncertainty, normal feels revolutionary. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, my old anxiety flares. But it is Emma, Dad, or Linda demanding something or trying to guilt me. It's a colleague from work, asking if I want to join a group of nurses for dinner next week. Yes, I text back immediately. I can afford dinner with friends now. I have reliable babysitting because Mrs. Parker downstairs adores Danny and enjoys earning extra money watching him occasionally. I have the emotional energy for social relationships because I'm not constantly managing family drama or financial stress. Looking back, I realize that what happened at dinner wasn't really about the apartment. Though the apartment changed everything, it was about finally seeing my family clearly, without the fog of obligation and hope that had clouded my vision for decades. They never really loved me. They never started, but Aunt Maggie did. Danny does. My real friends do. And most importantly, I finally learned to love myself enough to demand better treatment. The apartment was a gift, but the life I've built here, that's something I earned. As I finish my coffee and get ready for another day at a job I enjoy, in a home I love, with a child who feels secure and happy, I think about that moment at the table when the truth exploded like a bomb in the middle of Linda's perfect dinner. The best part wasn't watching their faces when they realized they'd been caught. The best part was looking at my own reflection in the dining room mirror and seeing a woman who finally knew exactly what she was worth.